just since there is that little delay, go ahead and share screen. There we go. Just got, all right. We'll start in a few minutes. Very excited. I'm excited to see who shows up tonight.
Me too.
I told it to the AUM Ollie class today and the docents this week. So we'll see. Oh, we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Well, good. I hope it'll be interesting for people.
I think so. It's something that I don't think a lot, it really gets covered. So it'll be enjoyable. All right. See, 5:30. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to tonight's creative conversation. I'm Elisabeth Palmer and I'm joined by a good friend and artist, Elana Hagler, who will discuss and hear more about her involvement with the United States Mint's Artistic Infusion program, her coin design process, and how it differs from the drawings and paintings that many of us in Montgomery have enjoyed at local galleries and here at the MMFA. If you have any questions for Elana about her design, art, this project, the program during tonight's conversation, please feel free to ask them in the comment section. And for those watching who may not know Elana, I'll share a bit about her. Oh, hold on. I need to record. There we go. During tonight's conversation, so those who, sorry, backtrack. For those watching who don't know of Elana, I'll share a bit about her origin story. She was born in Tel Aviv, Israel, and her family immigrated to the United States when she was 5. She received her Bachelor of Arts in both studio art and psychology from Brandeis University in Boston, and continued her studies for 2 years at a master class of the Jerusalem Studio School, and then studied in Umbria, Italy. She then received her Master of Fine Arts from the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia, and her drawings and paintings are often figurative and naturalistic, and her portraiture is quite stunning and capturing the personality and emotions of her sitters. She is an assistant professor of art at Alabama State University here in Montgomery, a staff writer for the popular art blog Painting Perceptions, and recently an artist in the AIP whose design for the George H.W. Bush presidential $1 coin was recently selected by the United States Mint and will be sculpted by the chief engraver, Joe Mena. Elana, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
Yes, and so I wanted to, before kind of get started, we have some images here. This one of your grandfather, I believe, yes. And we have one of your still lifes here, which is a great example and really just beautiful example of your work.
Thank you.
And so these are the paintings, and then we have another example of your drawing and portraiture of your daughter, Dina. And they're just so sweet, and I'm, really excited to share how this translates to your coin design. And you've been drawing since you were little, and you have a fascinating story of, where you've studied, where you lived in Jerusalem, Umbria, Boston, Philadelphia. And it's just fascinating and amazing. And in preparation for our talk and thinking about the shift from paper to canvas and to coin design, I wanted to start at what inspired you to apply for the Mint's Artistic Infusion program.
Well, I never in my life imagined that I would be designing coins. It wasn't on my radar even at all. But in the fall of 2018, the United States Mint put out a call for artists. And a few of my friends sent it to me and asked if I had considered applying. I thought about it, but I thought it was so unlikely that I didn't really think too much about it. It's like, don't let my mind go there, because really, what are the odds?
Right.
Well, now I know what the odds were.
And yay, congratulations.
Thank you. So I applied sort of with the idea of one of my aunts. She has this statement that's always with me, which is that you already have no for an answer. So maybe you'll get a yes. So I just thought that it sounded like the most interesting thing in the world. And I tend to be fastidious with my art anyway. And the idea of having this tiny little canvas really appealed to me. And so I just gave it a shot and thought, why not try? And the application process itself was very involved. It took about 6 months altogether.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I sent in my curriculum vitae, and I sent in 10 samples of my work. Then I made it to the final round, at which point I was asked to actually create a sample design. And at that point, I didn't really have a good sense of what a coin design even looked like. So I really just gave it my best guess. Mm-hmm. And was absolutely stunned when I got into the program.
Awesome. That's very exciting. And I'm sure other people in the audience, you might be joining me in this. I wasn't aware of the program until we were hanging out and you were talking about it. And so can you talk more about the program, its process? And I know there are a lot of layers to the program. So its process, how you plan your designs, there's a selections committee, there's feedback. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. And if you feel like I leave something out, just let me know.
I will.
So the first thing that happens, well, actually, let me rewind a little bit. There are 27 of us in the program finally who are selected. And it's 27 artists from all over the United States. We're from different areas, and we have different ages, different life experiences. So what the Mint wanted with this program, my understanding anyway, and I certainly don't speak for the Mint, I speak from my own point of view as an artist, is that they really wanted to have a wide selection that they could choose from in terms of the art that's coming in. Before this program, it was the in-house sculptor engravers who work in the Mint actually in Philadelphia, who were the people who were designing the coins. And sometimes the Mint would open it up to the public for like a coin designing competition. Okay. Which is pretty cool. Yeah. So then in 2003, they actually started up this program. And the artists who have been in it from the beginning joined in 2004. So now it's still sculpted by the in-house sculptor engravers. And they also can design coins, and I mean, design ideas and stuff. The actual subject matter either comes from Congress or comes from inside the Mint itself. For example, like congressional gold medals obviously come from Congress.
Okay.
So the sculptor engravers can also submit designs. And then they're the ones who, when a final design is selected from any of us artists, for example, in the Artistic Infusion program, they're the ones who actually sculpt them, like, you know, big.
Ooh.
And sometimes that's done physically, sometimes that's done digitally. And ultimately, all of it goes through a digital phase. And then they make the dies. And then the dies eventually make the coins or the medals. Let's see, what else about the process can I tell you? How about how it gets selected?
Yeah, because that sounds like a very involved process.
Yes. So, well, before it even goes up for selection, there's a pretty rigorous process. One of the differences between my personal work and then the work that I do for the Mint is with my personal work, you know, I'm the only one playing and making all the decisions, right? I get to be just absolutely spoiled and do whatever I want to do any given time. That's one of the perks of being a visual artist. But with this, we actually get feedback, which is really, really helpful. And the feedback that we get is there are kind of 3 different levels. One is legal, to make sure that we're using sources responsibly. The other one is coinability, to make sure that we're actually making designs that can be minted, right? So that's something that I had to learn all about, because obviously I had no idea, what does it mean that you have to think about coinability? Well, for example, you can't have letters that are too small or too close together. And that also includes elements of the design. And then you have to consider, is it going to be polished to mirror shine? Is it going to be a proof coin or not? Because that means different things, because, you need to be able to get into certain places in the process of making it. Mm-hmm. And the other one is aesthetic feedback. And that's provided by the chief engraver, who is Joe Mena. And that's been really, really helpful, because I feel like a lot of what I learned about what it takes to make a coin design, rather than a drawing, I learned from him, because he gave a lot of very, very helpful feedback, especially in the beginning, more like this, less like this. And so there was definitely a big learning curve, because I've been drawing and painting, I feel like, for quite some time now, and I've been teaching it for a long time. And I feel like the fact that I've been teaching for so long has made me appreciate being in the position of a student that much more. I mean, it's really a lot of fun after you haven't been a student for a long time, and then you go in and you start learning something completely different. It's like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and I would imagine too that being a teacher and having different students throughout the year, there are also opportunities for you to learn from each other too. So you were kind of prepared for that as well, maybe. Yeah.
Absolutely. So then you're done with your design. You've gotten edits back, and you've made the edits, and you send it off. And at that point, everything's out of my hands. Then it's fate. It's fate and the committees, and it's the Secretary of the Treasury. So there are two committees that make recommendations for the Secretary of the Treasury. And one of them is called the CCAC, and that's the Citizens Coinage Advisory Committee. And they're numismatic experts, and they deal specifically with choosing coins and metals. There are 11 of them. The other committee is called the United States Commission of Fine Arts, or the CFA. And there are 7 of them, and they're experts in the arts. For example, there are a lot of retired museum directors on there. And both of the committees make their recommendations, and the recommendations have equal weight to the Secretary of the Treasury. And ultimately, the decision comes down to him.
Yeah. And how, maybe you said this, but how long is that wait? How long does a typical selection take?
I can't even say that there's a typical thing, because in my experience, it's just really varied.
Okay, yeah. Well, man, that's painful to wait for. So we're here to celebrate and talk about your design being chosen for the George H.W. Bush $1 presidential coin. Here's this wonderful sketch of it. And along with, if you, like me, weren't aware of the Artistic Infusion program, you probably don't know about the Presidential Coin Project. It doesn't appear on our radar very often. I believe these coins are commemorative, usually collectibles, but can you tell us about this project, how you became involved, maybe more about the material?
So it's part of a series,
okay,
which is the Presidential $1 Coin Series. And it originally went through all the presidents, and then it stopped after Reagan. So then new legislation was passed through Congress that allowed it to be started back up again. And it was started back up after President George H.W. Bush passed away, because, and I didn't know this until I started the program, but you actually can't have living people on coins. You can have them on metals, but not on coins. And the difference, of course, is that one is actually currency. It's worth United States money.
I can see that. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So basically, after he passed away and after Barbara Bush passed away, then there were coins made of both of them, and hers being part of the first spouse series. And her portrait was done by my colleague Ben Sowers, who did a really wonderful job on it. Let's see, the materials. So I actually wrote this down because it's hard for me to remember, because this is not a 100% gold coin or 100% silver coin.
And I had asked you too about it, because the First Lady series, they're gold coins.
Yes.
And it was hard to find what this material was, but you found out. You've broken it down to percentages.
Yes. So they're golden colored coins. So if you've ever held a Sacagawea dollar in your hand, they're pretty much very much the same as that. They're 88.5% copper, so that's the biggest part of them, 6% zinc, 3.5% manganese, and 2% nickel.
That's really cool. I mean, not outside of silver or the gold coin, nickel, just hadn't thought about some of those other elements being used in the coin. So that's really, really cool and very exciting for when they do release the image of the final coin, because they haven't done that yet. They're supposed to sometime this fall, whenever that means. So stay tuned for that, everybody.
Absolutely. I'm so excited that Joe Mena sculpted it, so I'm really just excited to see the final product and just hold it in my hands. I can't even imagine what that will feel like.
Yeah, I imagine that's just going to be so, just to have that 3D object of your design sculpted by a teacher, mentor, while you're going through the program. He's also the chief engraver. It's a really cool product. That's object. Very cool. So here we have your sketch, and I want to talk about this because there are a little, the lines are a little bit more bold than what I think we're used to seeing in some of your drawings. What was your visual reference for his design? And what were you trying to capture about him?
Well, that's a good question. Well, first of all, yes, it's definitely a lot more linear than my drawings tend to be. So my drawings tend to be more tonal in nature, and the lines are more like visual accents rather than the way they're used here. The way they're used here is what is called a map to sculpt. So for example, when I work on my own drawings, I'm very interested in just the mysterious flux of being and how that can be sort of embodied into form, right? So that means losing some edges and having other edges emerge, and not explicitly stating everything out, not like a police report. It's not just the facts, ma'am, that kind of stuff. There's just more mystery to it. And here I am directly trying to communicate to a sculptor how that person is going to be doing this, right? It's literally a map. So I have to make sure that there's a lot of clarity, that nothing's sort of waffling, but everything's very precise, decisive, things like that. In terms of what I used for references, there was one main reference that I used, and that was provided by the Mint. I believe that it was contributed by the Bush family. This isn't just based on that one reference. So what I did was I looked through so many photographs. I mean, countless photographs of George H.W. And also a bunch of videos of the president talking. And I didn't really look into people talking about him, because I felt like, just being an American, I already felt like I sort of knew generally about him, and just being aware of the news, being, aware of politics and history and things like that. And having a husband who's a historian definitely helps the situation.
Yeah, and a little bit out of an advantage there. Yeah.
And so I was coming into consciousness as a person when President Bush was the president of the United States. So some of my earliest memories really deal with him, you know,
Mm-hmm.
him in that office. So really what I did was, in a way, I tried to kind of put all of that out of my head
Mm-hmm.
and just be with all these various images of him and watch him talking in video and just try to see if I can kind of feel him out.
Okay.
Because when you're working for such a long time with somebody's likeness, you start to feel in a weird way like you absorb them, you get to know them. And maybe that's just me tricking myself, it's very likely, but it does take on this very kind of intimate experience. And so I look through just tons of images of him and sat with those images, because what I didn't want to do was capture him on any one specific moment, but more something that felt like it got to the essence of who he was as a person.
Mm-hmm. And
it doesn't matter whether I'm dealing with my own personal work or whether I'm dealing with designs for the Mint. My main goal so much of the time is just to capture this sense of presence, which is a very difficult thing to define. And it's definitely beyond just a physical likeness. And I do think a likeness is very important. I mean, you know, being a portrait artist, yeah, I think likeness is important, but it's secondary to this concept of presence.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And so maybe we can maybe talk about some of those elements of presence in your sketch. You know what, we can go to the coin, because this is your sketch, or one of your sketches, because I'm sure you have many. And
one.
One. Okay. Uh-huh. And so here is the released image of the coin, and which is just really, I don't know, it's just very warm and friendly and presidential, and I think you did a great job. But like, will you talk about some of those elements of presence that you added?
Mm-hmm. Well, the funny thing about presence is it's one of those experiences that you feel and that's really hard to articulate.
Oh, I see. Hard question, my bad.
I just might not be necessarily up to the task, because, you know, when I talk to my students, I talk all the time about the various things you could do to sort of open the door,
okay,
for presence to walk into the room, right? But then ultimately, it's an utterly mysterious process.
Okay.
And you do the best you can at measurement, at composition, at balancing light and dark, at describing form, all these things, and then you just kind of leave a little door open, okay, and then you hope it's going to come in.
Well, I mean, the portraits that I've seen from you, they always just have that presence. They're very engaging. He's very engaging, and just to me, like with his eyes and his smiles, and I guess the way that he's holding himself. I think that's whatever the mystery was, however that happened, it's just really wonderful. And so we'll leave it at a mystery. And if somebody is able to articulate that mystery for us, feel free to do so in the comments. So I think we do have a question. We have a few questions before we want to move on. What is the hardest thing about drawing something that will become three-dimensional? And this is from Doug on Facebook.
That's a good question. I think it's the balance between preserving nuance and yet being very clearly descriptive. Because sometimes when I get too linear, it goes into the dangerous territory of starting to feel more like a mannequin and less like a person with presence, like we were talking about. So I want the clarity, but at the same time, I want the naturalism. So I think it's striking the balance between those two.
That's a good question. Thank you, Doug. So now, so talked about this coin design, this coin, as I've mentioned, they're the series, the presidential coins, the first lady coins, they're commemorative, they're produced as collectibles, they're not often seen in circulation. And I think you have a story a little bit about that. So why don't we talk about that for a bit before I ask you about the significance of coin collecting?
Specifically about
the circulation, the commemorative.
Yeah. So yes, so dollar coins, as you know, used to be in circulation, but they haven't been for quite a few years now. And so these are really collector's items. And a lot of people, online, I see these communities of people who are very enthusiastic about coin collecting. And especially, you know, they have a special case that has all the presidential coins and they're waiting, you know, they have the spot already for this one, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, that's cool. And so these are not in circulation, but sometimes, and because these aren't made out of gold or precious material, these are about what they're the dollar value, unlike some other ones. So sometimes you have those fun collectors you were saying that will buy in bulk. I think that's just so funny. And I'm hoping that, I want to see these. I want to come across them in circulation. Come on, people.
So what you're alluding to is something I told you a little bit earlier. And then I forgot about that right now, which is that I heard that there are collectors actually that will buy, a bunch of these in bulk. And so they cost a little more than the dollar to purchase, the dollar that they're actually worth. And then locally, wherever they are, they will actually introduce them, into circulation, because they certainly can be in circulation.
Yeah.
You're not going to want to do that with a more expensive coin like solid gold or anything like that. But with these, I think just as a lark, I've heard people will just start paying things with them and just put them into like a town or a city's just generally circulating coinage.
That's so cool. I would be so excited and nerdy to just come across one of those.
Isn't that wonderfully nerdy?
It is. And so, which brings us to coin collecting. Preparing for this talk, we had a conversation about coin collecting. Some of my early moments was when the state quarters were being produced and put in, and my mom's a geography teacher, so really nerdy moment of completing the map of the state coins. And something that we've shared that I thought about later is when my mom would travel, she'd bring back the currency of where she traveled, and I would play with the coins and I would organize them by shape and size and color. And you have a similar story to that too. So will you tell us about coin collecting for you?
Well, that's one of the ways in which we're very alike.
We are, yeah. The list is very long.
My mom also collected the state quarters. She got the little map and everything with all the circles in it, and she was very into it. And my family also lived in a lot of different places. So when I was a kid, I had this tea tin that was filled with coins from all the various countries we had lived in, like Romania, like Israel, like Russia, Ukraine, Moldavia. My family got around.
Yeah.
And I used to play with them. Like, I was not so much into playing with Barbie dolls as a kid, but I would take out these coins and make up little stories about them, and they would go on little adventures with each other.
It's awesome.
And actually, I don't know if you'd be interested in hearing this, but there are a couple of stories from the different sides of my family that have taken on a new light for me since I've started doing this coin work.
Let's hear them. Strap in, everybody. Let's story time.
So on my maternal side, I come from a long line of Torah scribes, sofers. So they lived mostly in poverty, were very pious people, and spent their lives basically hunched over a Torah scroll. And it's incredibly exacting work, because if there's even one letter that's a little messed up, a little off, then the scroll is not considered kosher, and it can't be used for ritual purposes. So you can imagine how much is at stake here. And of course, this is done on hide, right, with ink. So this is not like pencil on paper correctable. So I think about that and the generations of just perfecting all those micro movements and everything that was at stake, because it didn't matter how much love, attention, time, you know, what period of your life you poured into this scroll, because if it was even off by one letter, it had to be buried.
Oh, man.
A little bit of pressure.
Well, just a little bit.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So there was this same sort of kind of working with your hands and this need for precision.
Yeah, it comes out in your work. You come by it very naturally.
There's something to be said for genetics, maybe. I don't know.
Well, and I think being in that environment too, you just pick up those habits, you know, those traits.
Everything, some mysterious combination of nature and nurture, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then there's a totally different story on my paternal line, but again, I see it in completely new lights now that I'm doing coin design.
So excited.
So my maiden name was Palmer. And most people now don't have no idea what my maiden name was because I got married so young that, you know, almost everybody in my life has only ever known me as Hagler. But I was once Palmer. And my father's brother told me the story of how our family got that name, because it didn't always have that name. I believe it was something like Schweitz before. Okay. But some distant ancestor, and this is somewhere in Eastern Europe, was running from the law and changed his name to escape the law because he was accused of forging money. Yes, so criminal ancestor running from the law, changed his name, the name that I grew up with. So in a funny way, I feel like this opportunity now to like make legit money with the United States Mint is that coming around full circle and maybe putting some closure on that kind of story with my family and maybe even healing it in some way.
I'm sure that just the closure coming full circle, like just how funny is that's on, you know, in your family tree and now what you're doing. Wild stories. See, fascinating origin story from Elana Hagler. So very cool. So how do you think, kind of going back a little bit to the coin, and when this comes out, you'll have one too, since you produced it. It means quite a bit. How do you think working on a project like this, shapes how we are represented as, the presidency, the country, who we are identity-wise?
Well, it's amazing to be part of this program because what all of us as artists and everybody involved in this in the Mint are doing is helping to kind of create the visual stories that talk about our country and that represent our country to the rest of the world, and then also represent our country going into the future. I mean, if you think of past civilizations that existed hundreds, thousands of years ago, what we have left, so much of what we have left is coins we've dug up out of the ground. And I know that a lot of the art that we make, it's really aspirational. It's about honoring and memorializing that which is collectively important to us. And it's a huge deal for me to be a part of that.
Very sure. And I think kind of leads into my next question is, this is a president that you have early memories of. What does it mean to have your design for his presidential coin to be chosen?
Oh gosh, well.
Big question, sorry.
I'm going to go back again into family a little bit to answer this.
Yeah.
I was raised by my grandparents who survived the Holocaust. when I found out that that my drawing was actually selected for this, I was just thinking about how unlikely it is. Like thinking about telling my grandmother at age 5, telling my grandfather at age 10, when the Holocaust was broken out and they were, you know, running from the Nazis for their lives, and everything was impoverished and everything was disaster, and it looked like nothing good was ever going to happen again ever. That one day your grandchild would have the opportunity to do an official portrait of the United States president is just like incomprehensible. So I feel very fortunate to have this opportunity, and I'm just so grateful.
It's just a wonderful feeling. I think, you know, just the journey that you and your family have been on, and to have this achievement. I can only imagine just like those feelings that you might be feeling. So wonderful. I think haven't seen any questions. So if you are watching and you have questions, please do keep them coming. To Angie has pointed that I did sit for you, Elana. I guess a year ago now. We want to talk about that. I was avoiding that, since I do know what it's like to sit for you. And I got several compliments of that, from that. And my parents were just so proud, and they love it. They just captured me.
Did you find me to be a very cruel taskmaster during that whole experience?
No. In fact, I was just kind of, you know, it was very calming just to kind of sit for you and the class, and for however the 15-30 minutes, poses, and just kind of be in my own space, and then seeing the progress, your process, you know, it was just really magical and mysterious to me, because I'm not a very good drawer. I can do stick figures, and I can I'm a good copier if I take the time to do it, but you just creating something the way that you do is really amazing. And you know, just whoever you know who sits for you, you're just you capture who they are, and that's just,
it's very kind of you.
Mind-blowing to me. And you do such a, like, it's so beautiful too. And I love that. I think that's the best picture of me, actually, for real. Because it's just, I don't know what it is about it. You just did such a great job. And just like the coin and your paintings are just so, I like the mysterious lines that you leave us. You leave the viewer a little bit of work to do. In your work. I like.
Well, I don't expect to have lazy viewers. You know, no. I ask a lot of my viewers,
and we appreciate. Well, I'll speak for me. I appreciate it. And see any other. I hope. Angie, if you have any follow-ups, we can talk about that. If anybody else does, keep them coming. I did have some other questions since we have a couple of more minutes. Do you know if the Bush family likes the coin? Have they seen it? Have you heard anything from them?
So one thing I neglected to mention when I was talking about the process of coins getting selected is that there are always people who are in one way or another subject matter experts, right? And in this case, the subject matter experts were the Bush family, members of the Bush family. And they actually saw the coin before either of the committees saw the coin, and they expressed, well, they saw all the designs, right? And they expressed their preferences and chose this one. So I suppose that does mean that the Bush family indeed liked it. And that's a really big deal for me, because who could possibly know him better than his own family, right?
That's true, yeah. And I think that maybe you didn't get to meet the Bush family, but what have you been some of your most favorite, most memorable moments from being part of the program so far? And have you, maybe some of these moments, have you gotten to correspond with important people like historians, politicians, maybe people that he may not say, I mean, you may not be able to say names, but like anybody we've heard of?
I don't know that if it's anybody who would like, you would be so super like shocked by. But in terms of some of my favorite moments, what was really fun is not this summer, but the previous summer, at the beginning of the summer, I got to go to DC where we had a 3-day symposium. And I got to meet all the people that I work with on a regular basis at the Mint. And I got to meet all my colleagues, the other artists in the Artistic Infusion program, as well as sculptor engravers. And that was really neat. And especially since, we had various topics that they taught to us that were just fascinating. And that whole 3-day experience was like a wonderful blur. And I enjoyed it so much. And then in terms of meeting people, I mean, I got to be on the phone and ask questions of family members of some people being honored. And I can't go into detail about who these were, but it was really just interesting to be able to hear them talk about that person and to have the opportunity to ask questions also after that. So that's been really neat. It's part of the research that goes into all of these. And I've actually worked on, so far, 13 different coins or medals. Some of them one-sided and some of them two-sided where I did 2 separate designs.
Okay.
So there's been a whole lot so far, and it's been very exciting, challenging, and I've enjoyed it because it's like art in general where it's problem solving, right? Because when you do your own work, you make up your own problems and then you go about trying to solve them.
Right.
In this case, it's the Mint or it's Congress that presents us with these really interesting problems. And then we do research and all these sketches and just try various things to try to come at the best possible answer that we can.
Very, very cool. Thank you, Elana. So I think, I don't know if we talked about this, but when did you get accepted into the program? How long are you in it?
So the whole application, the process started fall of 2018. And then the symposium, after which I actually started getting assignments, was the summer of 2019. And when I signed a contract, I signed a 5-year contract. And then I have the opportunity to renew after that if they would like to have me back. So I'm one of the newbies. There are people who have been in the program a lot longer than I have and just do remarkable work. And it's just so neat for me to be part of this group, this team of artists that all do such wonderful work. Some of them, like myself, come up from a fine art background. Some of them come more from an illustration or a design background. And so it's just really neat to have all of that together.
Yeah, to be part of that group of different backgrounds. That's really cool. And I see that, Lisa, I hope that answered your question. You and I had that at the same time. And it sounds like Elana will have additional opportunities to design coins with different projects coming up. Some of them she can't talk about right now, but maybe in the future we can hear something else. Frank Gitcher has weighed in about his what he likes about the portrait, and he really likes the optimism you've drawn into his face. It really humanizes Bush. Not sure it was a trait of his that people picked up on, but something that Frank has picked up on.
Well, I appreciate him saying that. Thank you, Frank.
So thank you, Frank, for that. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa says we won't tell about the projects that you're working on. I'm sure the Mint will find out, though, so we don't want to get Elana in trouble.
No, I'm sticking by those rules. That's for sure.
We appreciate that. We'll keep it that way. But thank you, Elana, so much for your time tonight. It's been a joy talking to you about this. I hope everyone at home has enjoyed this conversation about coin design, hearing from Elana about her process. And I've learned so much about coin design that I just couldn't even fathom beginning to know. So thank you so much. Look forward to seeing maybe another coin design by Elana Hagler, and fingers crossed. Everybody out there, fingers crossed.
Think good thoughts, people.
Yes, put it out in the universe. So thank you so much. If anybody has, I don't see any other further questions, so I think we'll end it there. And everyone have a wonderful night, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you for the next creative conversations. Thank you so much.
This has been lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we are.
Still says live on Facebook.